It's chaos.
It's a different type of Sunday scary.
It's your newest obsession.
It's Dirty Driving, a Formula One podcast.
We're the Hornsby sisters. I'm Katie.
And I'm Megan.
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Hey, hey, hey. We have 2 races left.
2 races left, 2 race weekends left. It's going to be a thrilling end to the season, to honestly a very thrilling season that we've had in total. I can't believe how fast it's gone.
This year has gone by so quick. I feel like when Rosanna Tennant said on the post-race show that she's so excited for Abu Dhabi to be over to have a day off, that's how I feel. Because yes, I've had weekends, but it's not like my weekend is actually a weekend when it's dominated by Formula One. And then non-Formula One weekends, you have to fit all of your other life stuff into.
Yes, I am also looking forward to some time off, some time away from the mic, some time to reflect on the season, some time to prep for next season, all the things that happen in the off season.
We say this now, though, but I kid you not, 1 week after Abu Dhabi, we are going to be waiting patiently, counting down the days for the next season to start.
Yeah, we'll get a countdown going on the Instagram of how many days are remaining, and we'll just keep that updated, and that'll be that. And we'll survive the off season without Formula One altogether.
This weekend was really hard because this is the first weekend of the entire season that I have not watched the race real time. Regardless of what I've been doing, regardless of where I'm supposed to be, I have always had the Grand Prix on. I feel like the clip from F1 TikTok, which I know is from a famous British show that's like, I never miss the Grand Prix. It's the Grand Prix. I never miss the Grand Prix, is me until this weekend when I had to watch the race 4 hours late. I kid you not, it was painful, so sad, and I will never do it again. I don't care what it is, I'm gonna have to miss it.
And I actually moved my flight home to Chicago. I was leaving at 7 in a 2-segment trip, and I switched it to a direct flight leaving at 6 a.m. just so I could be in time to watch the race, because originally I was set to land like 20 minutes after the race had started, and I was like, oh, no. Both the Hornsby sisters can't not watch the race live. One of us has to be present and there for it and texting and updating the other one about what's happening. So yeah, I moved my whole flight. Shout out to Arnav for driving me to the airport super early. And now we're back in Chicago. We're back in business.
What's so frustrating about missing it late is that I had to avoid all forms of social media. There wasn't any social media that I could possibly be on because I would have received some update. And more importantly, I would have seen the joy on Checo's father and then surmised a result.
Yeah.
So I had to wait until I had real proof of what had happened before I could even do anything about it. Because I did not want to see that man's joy and assume it had been a Checo victory when, I mean, we know now it wasn't.
So happy to see him. I don't know if you saw it, Megan, but there was Papa Perez and Father Hamilton like retook or reimagined the photo that they took in Silverstone with Papa Perez kissing Father Hamilton. Well, this time it was Father Hamilton kissing Papa Perez on the cheek. Let me just clarify that. It was on the cheek. They weren't making out on live television. It was just a friendly father-father kiss.
I love their love, period. I love their love. End of statement. I have also decided that I need to find a Papa Perez hype man in my life because Checo's kids have the ultimate hype man of a grandfather. The video of the kids playing in the confetti and grandpa like scooping up the confetti and throwing it above their head. It's like those kids are going to live with like a permanent hype man in their life. What did you do at school today? Nothing. Confetti. What did you eat for dinner? Normal food, confetti is
Confetti.
I also just love, oh my God, I just love it, Katie. I cannot get over it. How cute Checo's son is. Because here Checo is doing his interview and the kid is just running around.
Has no care for where he is or what's going on as long as daddy's on podium and I get to run around and celebrate.
Which, don't get us wrong, we're going to do a full, deep evaluation analysis of the podium celebration because you thought I had words last year. It got worse.
It did.
What?
It did get worse, but we'll save that. We'll save that. So this weekend we were at the Mexico City Grand Prix, and I personally apologize for calling it the Mexican Grand Prix for 3 weeks of my life. It is actually the Mexico City Grand Prix. Good to know. I didn't know that either.
Just learned this. I was like, I feel so, I don't know if that's an insult, but it felt like I should have known the correct name of the race that I missed. Oops. So it is the home race for Checo, but let's be honest, Katie and I just said it. We did not watch this weekend for Checo. We watched this weekend for Papa Perez. We also just got a side of Father Hamilton. That was a plus. Didn't know he was going to be there. Should have guessed. Should have known.
I've noticed that he's been at, maybe not a lot more, but they've been at least showing him at a lot more races.
He has been. He was at Austin.
Yep. Mexico. Like, they just always flash to him at some point, and I'm like, oh, there's Father Hamilton. And I don't know. It's just like so rewarding.
I have seen him more.
Yeah. It's just like rewarding to see anyone's family, honestly, out there supporting their son.
Jamie Chadwick's, I got so excited. I bumbled her name. Jamie Chadwick's parents were there as well, which was so exciting. Checo's wife was there with the kids. Papa Perez was there. I'm trying to think if I saw any other family members.
Martin Garrix was there, which is not a family member, but he is teaching Lando how to DJ. And I love Martin Garrix. I think he was just
named the best DJ in the world.
That, and he is so attractive. Like, I don't know what it is, but Martin Garrix, hottest DJ in the world too.
Katie, can you please do a full deep dive on how all of the drivers became besties with Martin? I need to know all the details.
I would love to pull that together. But
this is the content that people need.
Max is buddies with them. Lando is buddies with them. They have matching, isn't it? I think it's with Martin. Or is it's
Lando, Max, and I think it's Kygo that they have matching necklaces.
They have matching necklaces, yeah. So, I mean, Martin Garrix.
My question is, how do you get voted the best DJ in the world? No, I didn't get to vote in that. I shouldn't be allowed to vote in that. I don't know many DJs, but
yeah,
what was the voting scheme? That's a whole nother issue Katie's going to have to investigate. She'll bring you that information in the Martin Garrix episode.
Yeah, we'll have a special edition about Martin Garrix's friendships with the F1 grid.
We're going to need a family tree. Martin in the middle, branching out.
I can get a whiteboard behind me and I can give I
love this.
I can give a lesson. Yeah.
We'll pull it together. In the off season. Katie's number one priority, Martin Garrix friendship tree.
Friendship tree.
Friendship tree thing. Jeez Louise. This is exactly why they came to the podcast, to hear about Martin Garrix. It has nothing to do with the Mexico City Grand Prix. The Mexico City Grand Prix that took place 2 days ago when you're listening, 1 day ago for us, is a 71-lap race, and it felt long. For how short those laps were, it felt long. The circuit was built in 1959. It was named for the Rodriguez brothers, whose father was instrumental in getting the track even built to begin with. Originally, it was named the Magdalena Mexico Sporting Park. The track sits 2,200 kilometers above sea level, which makes it the highest race of the year, but also presents a whole list of new challenges, some of which we saw, some of which we didn't learn about or didn't really see, but probably impacted or played a role in it. Ultimately, the biggest challenge for the teams was the fact that these are new cars that have never been to this circuit and never been at that altitude. So it was a giant question mark, especially in terms of the tires. So what are those challenges, you may ask? I know you're asking. The minute I said there were challenges, you were like, Megan, please tell us. Here they are. The first one, and one that I would not have thought about, but remembering back to my own experiences in Colorado, my response is, well, no shit, Sherlock. So the first one, and the one we probably don't see and didn't hear much about, at least I don't remember hearing much about it, is the fact that the drivers, mechanics, and essentially everyone involved with the teams, the whole enterprise, can experience altitude sickness, especially for drivers and individuals who live at sea level, aka Monaco, where most of them live. So again, not something we're probably seeing, not something we're probably talking about, but definitely a reason why drivers like to get there a little bit earlier to adjust to it. The one person who's not going to suffer from this is Checo, considering he lives there and has been around it the longest. He's the most attuned or accustomed to it, is essentially. The second one, and this one is also something I was like, well, no shit, Sherlock, when I first kind of started looking into this, is that the higher altitude, there's less air density. So the air is in fact thinner. It makes it harder to breathe, but it also makes it harder for the cars to generate downforce. So teams are going to be running, or did run, their maximum downforce setup. So think like the Monaco setup. But trying to make a Monaco setup work on a track that you're also going to need to balance the drag, as well as balance the fact that you need to cool the components. Because the third biggest challenge is the thinner air means that there's going to be trouble cooling the engines, the turbochargers, and the brakes. So teams have to manage that temperature, making sure that there's getting enough flow, because essentially we saw it with the AlphaTauri. When the cars stop, there's a reason why the pit crew immediately put those like leaf blower things on the brakes, is because if air is not moving past them to cool them, they will catch on fire. We saw that. Liam Lawson in for the AlphaTauri, his brakes literally caught on fire. We had Gasly complaining about brakes. We had Ricciardo complaining about brakes. In the race, Ocon was complaining about the fact that they were having tire temperature management problems and couldn't cool the car. That's why he couldn't push. So definitely a massive issue to play a role in strategy, managing the car. And really, it was kind of what we heard all weekend. That was the big conversation, other than the tire test, right, Katie? I can't really think of anything other than issues with thin air was dominant.
Yeah, it was prominent. It was on the front lines, and we heard about it all weekend. And we knew this. It's not like all of a sudden Mexico City's altitude increased in the last year. That'd be hilarious if it did.
That'd be so funny.
But new cars and all, we weren't sure how they were going to run, like Megan said. So honestly, I'm surprised we didn't see any like bigger blow-ups happen. So cheers to everyone.
I think they got lucky.
I think they got lucky.
I fully believe they got lucky, because the track temperature on Sunday was a lot lower than they thought because the clouds and stuff. The other thing I feel so bad about this in terms of everything is that we really were kind of hoping, people were talking, because of the altitude, it was going to give us this 6-car battle at the front. And really, we got a 4-car battle at the front. It was just a different team. Instead of it being Red Bull and Ferrari, it was Red Bull and Mercedes. So unfortunately, the race that we thought would be a bigger equalizer just ended up being a strange equalizer. We'll go with that. The first Grand Prix was held here in 1962. It was a non-championship race, though. It was more like a test run. And then the following year, there was actually a Formula One World Championship Grand Prix held here in 1963. But because the first one was technically in 1962, they celebrated the 60th anniversary this year. That's why you saw the big 6-0 on the track. In 63, that first official sanctioned race was won by Jim Clark. Today, the track is a little bit different than the original one. We have the stadium section, but the track is comprised of 17 corners, most well known for that stadium section that we got a lot of beautiful views of, and a place that Katie and I must immediately start looking to find a way to be there, because let me tell you, it looks like a great place to party and to watch F1.
I was watching the race with John, and that was the first thing he said. He was like, wow, this track is so cool. The stadium section. I told him it was the stadium section, and he was like, wow, it's insane. It's beautiful. So it got me excited about the race, because I forgot how exciting a new track can be for a new F1 fan. And so I was like, okay, yeah, Mexico. Yeah, give it to me. The Mexico City Grand Prix.
I still cannot believe that I didn't know that. It's only been the Mexico City Grand Prix for 2 years.
Okay,
the
so
naming convention has just changed.
Forgive us for calling it the Mexican Grand Prix.
I'm technically a Mexican Grand Prix isn't necessarily wrong.
We're not wrong, yeah,
but we're wrong.
So the GP has been held on and off the calendar over the years due to safety concerns. It's been held in 3 different chunks of time, if you will. So from 1963 to 1970, from 1986 to 1992, and then 2015 until now. It returned in 2015 after massive upgrades to the rundown circuit. And I'm not digging on the circuit. It's just a fact. That's the reason why it had left in 1992. It was just in need of some sufficient upgrades. I mean, the only break. Oh, sorry, Megan, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's 15, 13 years without F1 money showing up there. It's run down.
Yeah, it needed it. Needed a little facelift, as we say. So it got its
Don't
facelift. We all. You know what? I need a facelift after sitting in the Austin sun and having my nose burn and my forehead burn. We haven't even talked about that, Megan. Are you okay now? Have you recovered?
No, my face peeled all weekend. I literally looked like I couldn't even put makeup on for Halloween. I was like, I have to find a costume that in fact requires no makeup.
Yeah, no, I struggled. And then I accidentally got a little red again in California. So it was just I'm tan, if you can't tell. If you're not watching, I'm tan now, so I'll take it. Tan when it's 40 degrees in Chicago, it's a beautiful thing.
It keeps you warm in the cold walks.
So the only break that the circuit took was in 2020 due to COVID. And this weekend, I think it was actually Friday. So yeah, it was this weekend. It was announced that the race is going to continue in Mexico City until 2025. The contract has been extended. This is a definite no-brainer. I feel like it's the perfect pre-finale to the finale of the season. It's exciting. It's Checo. Another thing that I pointed out to John when we were watching the podium is I was like, do you hear them chanting? Do you hear how loud it is? Because the TV was vibrating. That's how loud it was. And it was Checo, Checo, Checo. He is just so loved. It makes me happy.
So a couple of things. First off, they love Checo. We saw that in Austin. You see it we even saw it in Canada. It doesn't matter what's happening. If there's a group of Checo fans, they're shouting Checo, Checo. It could not even be race related. A plane could fly overhead and they're like, Checo. I love it. Checo. I repeat, I love their love of Checo. I love it. I wish more people had love like that. But the way Checo can command his fans, they were booing for Lewis, and Checo just waggles his finger like an irate mother, and the whole stadium stops. I was like, or at least, okay, look, it sounded like they stopped, but let me tell you, he little waggled that finger. I would have shut up too. Not that I would ever boo Sir Lewis.
No, you would. Neither of us would. We would be caught dead before we booed Lewis Hamilton. Honestly, any driver, because we respect our drivers.
So the whole booing thing is, I just have I really struggle, because in America it's very common to maybe not boo. Maybe I don't really like the booing, like boo, because it just sounds weird, but it's very common for like American sports fans to be like, no, like, you know, like get loud.
Is jeer the right word? Like Jeer? Am I using that right?
Maybe. I think like, so. I think
jeer them on. I don't know.
You don't jeer them on. You like. I don't even know. I don't
down. I'm googling jeer.
But I don't
think
necessarily
I
like the booing, and I don't like. I don't really like the yelling of the word cheater, but I don't dislike fans expressing their like annoyance at their rivals, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I it's really hard for me to articulate, because I think the big issue is I just fundamentally don't understand why anyone would boo Lewis Hamilton. He's not done anything that I think that deserves a boo. But if a driver were to do something that deserved a boo or a jeer, I don't necessarily think that it should be removed from the sport. I just think it should be respectful. Like, there's a difference between being disrespectful and being like respectfully like playing into the sports mentality, if that makes sense. I wouldn't, in Max's interview on stage in Austin, I would not yell cheater. And in fact, I was embarrassed that someone was yelling cheater. But I don't think it's like necessarily wrong to be like, we want Checo when Max comes out. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
there's a time and place. There's a time and place to jeer, and there's a time and place to not. So like, booing someone when they're on podium and they've just completed in the top 3 of a race, that's dumb as fuck. Like, I don't know how else to say it. It's dumb. It's rude. And they're in the top 3. Like, why the need to boo them on? No, there's no place for it there. I think if a good example, I'm hinting at something that happened in the race, but like the Daniel and Yuki collision, like, at that point, like when it happened, boo, like we're sad that that's happening. Like, it's a boo, but it's not necessarily directed at Daniel. It's directed at the incident, if that makes sense too.
Which again is why all of this is really hard and like niche, and like it's all like, I guess, your perspective on how you look at it.
Yeah. Like, I'm not a fan of booing people, so I don't boo people.
I don't personally boo anybody, but I'm also not like, look, if Max came out on stage and someone was yelling, bring out Checo, to me, that's like jeering. But there's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. But again, I think a lot of this conversation on when and how to support a driver or support your star versus not support another is very situational and dependent. Again, like Katie says, someone makes it on the podium, there's never, like, that doesn't deserve a boo. I personally can't think of an instance that maybe deserves booing. Maybe like but I think that's because I come from the lens of looking at like football. When there's a bad like play on the football field, everyone is like, boo. Like, if someone like takes out the quarterback, you're going to yell boo, but it's situational.
Right. And I think that's more focused on the play itself, like the move, like I mentioned, with the Daniel and the Yuki, it's like the incident versus booing a singular person.
And by the way, in all of this, it is never okay to jeer and have it be any sort of like sexist, homophobic, racist comment.
Yeah, any of that. It's not acceptable. And
you need to respectfully show your annoyance with X maneuver, X play. And it's really hard to translate that in America. I think this is maybe where there is a little bit of struggle is as American fans, we are booing at an incident or at like a ref that's made a bad call. The steward, like you can't boo a steward. You can boo a move, but again, it doesn't feel situational then because it's so quickly happened. So I think it is hard to translate. And no way am I defending those that yell cheater, those that ever boo, because I think people do it in F1 at the wrong times way too much. There's a way to do it respectfully.
There's a time and a place, and there's a way to do it that doesn't upset anyone else.
Correct. Respectfully show your support of your driver. I think that is the easiest way of saying it. Now that we've had this very long conversation, very necessary conversation, it's time that we talk about what happened this weekend. Let's begin at the beginning, FP1, where this session was dominated by rookies. Lots of teams brought in their rookies for that session this weekend as they are pushing to make sure they hit those 2 mandatory sessions, that mandatory session requirement that every team must have 2 young drivers in for 1 session throughout the year. With only 2 races left and a sprint weekend in Brazil, that let me tell you, that's not the race to do it at because you have FP1 straight into quali. So that's thrown out. Then all you have after that is Abu Dhabi. So it's pretty much necessary for the teams to make some of the switches happen this weekend and make sure they do not get in trouble. So in that session, we saw Jack Doohan in for Esteban Ocon, Nick DeVries in his last outing as a Mercedes driver, in for George Russell before Nick heads to AlphaTauri. He's worn so many team kits this year. Emerson Fittipaldi was in for Kevin Magnussen, Liam Lawson was in for Yuki Tsunoda, and Logan Sargent was in for Alex Albon. Katie, did you hear the tea about this session? I'm not sure if you heard it.
I did not, so fill me in, please.
He unfortunately did not reach the required 100 kilometers for the session to get him his super license point. So it's even more important what happens in Abu Dhabi because, again, he only has a seat in Williams if he gets the necessary points to get that super license. And ready for the extra icing on the tea? The FIA has already been fucking strict this year, i.e. Colton Herta. So if he doesn't have the points, I highly doubt the FIA grants him a exemption if he's like 1 or 2 points off to be able to get him into that seat. So you're telling me post Abu Dhabi, we could still be in the silly season conversations.
You hear that, John? Silly season is still happening.
Did you hear that, everyone? Silly season is not over. I mean, it's literally not over. We don't know about Mick Schumacher's seat, but this could go on
till the end of the season.
Beyond Abu Dhabi.
Beyond the season. Yeah.
Beyond the beyond. Into the beyond. Name that movie. If you know that, you can be a fan. Okay. FP2, this was the session of Pirelli tire testing. And let me tell you, I think the 2022 Pirelli tire testing is cursed. Hear me out. Ready? It was canceled in Japan because of the rain. It was interrupted in Mexico because of Charles Leclerc. And there was even a threat of rain. Mario, I'm so sorry. Mario, Mamma mia, I'm sorry. In FP2, it was interrupted by nearly 20 minutes due to the Charles Leclerc crash. Dude, he spun into the barriers, and for the first time ever, I now know what's inside of those barriers. It was like, whoosh. Not that I'm laughing at the incident, but it was funny when there was just like puff of stuff. Once we knew that Charles was okay. There was some gnarly damage done to the car. Ultimately, he was able to race and continue on, but it did push back the testing. So let's talk about Pirelli tire testing, because it's weird how little information you get from Pirelli. And I've come to realize that I just don't think they have the information yet. In fact, they did tell us they haven't analyzed the data from Austin. So they're doing this test, then they're going to go analyze the data, which is why we're not going to see them we won't see them testing at Brazil or Abu Dhabi. And there was no backup to the backup because they have to get ready for the postseason test. So for this session, if you were a driver that participated in FP1, then you just went straight into your 45 minutes of Pirelli tire testing. If you were a driver, let's say George Russell, who didn't run an FP1, you got the first 45 minutes to do your own program because you weren't in the car. And then for the second 45 minutes, you had to do the Pirelli tire test. If you felt you couldn't complete it in 45 minutes, you had to start earlier. It was required that you complete it. This was the most important part. This was all agreed on between the teams and Pirelli. Just like in Austin, this was a blind test, which means the drivers didn't know what specific compounds they were driving. And the reason it was kept a secret is to prevent any driver influence. Because if you know you're on softs, you're going to act differently. If you know you're on mediums, you're going to act differently, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This specific outing was to focus on testing the softer compounds, while Austin was to test and focused on the harder compounds, with the ultimate goal to decide the compounds that Pirelli was going to bring to the Abu Dhabi test, which is after the end of the season, to finalize for next year. Again, we don't know shit. It happened. We don't know how much data they were able to collect out of this one because of the crash and the 45-minute delay. We're going to have to see what happens at the Abu Dhabi test at the end of the year. The only other thing, fun fact, factoid, interesting nugget about the Pirelli tire test is that Max Verstappen has said that he would personally offer to test the wet tires outside of his normal commitments. And I'm not going to lie, I think the Pirelli should take him up on it.
Why not? I mean, if he wants to get out there and test some wet tires, by all means.
He offered in Suzuka. I mean, I think they do a test in Paul Ricard. Why not? Max has offered. Let the 24-karat gold helmet be used again. Y'all know I'm making fun of that later. Just wait. Just wait. So let's get into qualies. So it was a tight qualifying session. It was fun to watch this quali session. I don't know why I was so hyped about it. I think it's the energy on the screen that got you so into it. But it was an unfortunate session for Daniel Ricciardo, who lost out on Q3 by just 0.244 seconds. He would ultimately start the race P11, but I felt that in my soul. Sadness for that man. But on the other hand, so we got a Danny Rick out of Q3. In return, we got a Valtteri Bottas into Q3, his second time in a row. He ended up qualifying 10th in Austin, and this weekend he was 6th. So he was actually ahead of Charles Leclerc. So yes, let me tell you, I was in my VB hat. I was screaming in my VB hat alone. I'm not even ashamed to admit it. There is no video. Don't ask for it. And at the end of qualies, we would have a Max Verstappen pole position. But we did have the Mercedes splitting the Red Bulls with George Lewis. George Lewis?
Nope, sorry, try again.
In my head, I thought once I said George Lewis, I was like, oh my God, Star Wars? What is wrong with you? No. George Russell ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Unfortunately for Checo, he would qualify P4 in his home race. Then it would be Carlos Sainz, Valtteri Bottas, and Charles Leclerc. So definitely not the 6-way car race that we thought we were going to have.
No, and it was yet another weekend dominated by the great Max Verstappen. Megan, would you like to insert your comments about his 24 karat gold? Okay, I just want to clarify this because I had to clarify this to someone else. It's like gold leaf that was used.
Yes.
It's not actually. No, I'm clarifying this for the masses. Like, it's
I
not
thought you were telling
actually-
me. I was like,
No. For others, I was asked, so I'm just going to clarify it. It's not actually gold. Like,
Who
it is
asked?
gold, but it's not solid gold. Like, that
Put 'em
would
on
be
blast.
way too. That'd be way too
Put 'em on
heavy.
blast.
So I'm putting you
Who
on
was it?
blast. I can't say.
it's the intern.
It's one of the interns. He was like 24 karat gold, and I was like, gold leaf, babe. It's gold leaf.
Insert the Bruno Mars song, 24 karat.
24
Magic
karat in the
air. So here's my statement about it.
Okay,
I mean,
I'm ready.
It was douchey when you did the gold shoes. It was douchey when you did the one. Now you got a gold helmet? Bro, come on.
Like, bro, take some of the
look.
money you spent on that and donate it to a good cause.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Why did you spend the money on your helmet? And Max, I'm going to need to clarify this. Did you account for the gold in your 2022 cost cap? I went there.
She went there.
I thought you didn't have any money. You spent it all on catering. No, it just looks stupid. It looks stupid, and
It's just like, I'll agree that it's too much. It's over the top. I'm fine with the gold shoes. Like, whatever. I
moved
care.
on from the gold shoes. I saw them. I thought they were ugly, and I've evolved.
But the helmet is just.
I personally never liked him switching to number one because he's raced with 33 for so long. So now, like, also why dilute your brand by switchch your number? Because now there's all these shirts with ones on them and shirts with 33s on them.
Yeah, the 33s. Yeah.
I've never ever understood anyone changing like their number if they didn't have to, like if they weren't forced to. Also, like 33 was a good number. It worked with his logo. I don't know. Just go back to 33 next year, bro. What, are you going to go to 2?
No, because
I
he's
have
number
2
one.
championships.
All right, I'm getting us back on track. It's the first win for a pole sitter in Mexico for the last 5 years, and it's actually Max's 4th Mexico Grand Prix win in the last 5 years. He has managed to, let me start fresh. In the race, he managed to extend his stint on the soft tires long enough to make switching to mediums possible, and after that, he was in complete control of the race. It was his 14th. Oh, yes, Megan.
I would like to concur with our Lord and Savior, Daniel Ricciardo, and when he said that it will now be known as MAXico, not Mexico.
Oh,
that is all.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for that.
As I just roasted Max, I would like to then give something back to Max as he's 1-4. It is now MAXico.
Mexico. Good to know. So it was his 14th win this season, which means he takes the most wins in a season of any driver. He also broke the record for the highest points total for any driver at 416. Lewis Hamilton set the record back in 2019 at 413 points. So 2 new records that Max now has his name on. And then in addition, the win tied Red Bull's team record of 19 consecutive races on podium, which they set across the 2010 and 2011 season. So they are a dominant force if you had not picked up on that. P2 went to the good old Sir Lewis Hamilton.
Don't call my man old.
I didn't mean it like that.
Okay,
good.
Fine.
I said good old, didn't I? Good classic Lewis Hamilton. That's what I meant by that.
He's like a fine wine.
He's a fine wine. He crossed the finish line a little over 15 seconds behind Max, and he may not have secured his first win of the season, which, again, we are so hopeful that he scores one this year because he has won a race every season since his 2007 debut. But it was the closest he's come all year. It was his 8th podium of the season and 2nd P2 in a row, which helped move him into 5th in the Drivers' Championship. He is 15 points behind teammate George Russell. P3 went to good old, I said it again, good old Sergio Perez. He crossed the finish line a little over 18 seconds behind Max. This moves him into 2nd in the Drivers' Championship, just 5 points ahead of Leclerc. He made a great start from 4th on the grid. He was able to pull ahead of George for 3rd on lap 1, but suffered a slow pit stop, which had him come back out in 6th behind the Ferraris, who he was able to get around, but Hamilton kept track position, forcing the hometown hero to settle for P3. Megan, now we can talk about it. I want your opinion on the weird podium. Give it to me. Let me hear it.
Dumb. Like, why are we rising the drivers up from like the pit up onto this like grassy knoll where they can be on the podium? The only one that looked good doing it was Lewis Hamilton, because that man, he looks good doing anything.
True.
So I also just like can't understand why Max has to look weird and awkward on the car as they lift up the car to the podium. It's like, oh, it's like Simba. But the car is the dad and Max is Simba, and yet Simba looks like he's tired and doesn't want to be there. Like, dude, you just won the race. You couldn't stand up, jump around. You couldn't do anything. Your buddy Martin Garrix is about to DJ. You couldn't get the people hype. No. He's just like his leg propped up like Captain Morgan on the car. I'm like, this is just weird. It just needs to be done. Like, let's just stop. I'd rather him drive the car up there and then the other two can take an elevator or something. It's just weird.
Or just the stairs. They can
literally anything but being risen up on platforms like this is Cirque du Soleil.
All right. That was good. I'm glad you got that out. I could tell that you were holding that in and that you needed to release that. So I'm glad you did. George Russell took P4. He was disappointed he didn't podium, but was full of praise towards his team for the progress that they have made. He said, I made a good start, but Lewis was there on the other side. I was probably a little bit too cautious there with my teammate. Big shout out that there weren't any turn 1 incidents. And ultimately, that cost me 2 positions today because I would have ended up in 2nd and things would have been different, maybe. George Russell did, however, take fastest lap after starting on mediums and then switching to hards. He pit for new softs on the penultimate lap to steal the extra point from Red Bull. So all in all, great showing by him, but as he said, we could have seen a little bit more. The Ferraris took P5 and P6. I'm going to talk about them a little later, so hold on that for me. And our driver of the day in P7 was the good man, Danny Rick. Danny Rick, my dude. He ran long enough on his initial medium tires that he was able to switch for softs for the remainder of the race. He came in on lap 44 to make that switch from mediums to softs. And Danny and the pit crew, let's hear a little round of applause for them. Big shout out to them.
Snaps for McLaren.
Snaps for McLaren. They pulled off a 1.98 second pit stop, which is the fastest pit stop of the season and the first sub 2 second stop with the new 18-inch tires. So I don't know what they had in them, but they did it.
I mean, they pulled off those incredible pit stops in Monza last year. And then Sunday, they pull, like, occasionally the McLaren pit crew are like, let's try to beat Red Bull today. Like,
yeah.
Why can't we do this more often?
Consistently, too, but don't even get us started on that. So By lap 52, Danny Rick was making a dive past Yuki when the two of them ran into each other. Danny had not necessarily left enough room for Yuki, and Yuki turned in, so they collided, and Yuki ended up off track DNFing. Daniel took a 10-second time penalty for the incident. However, he was able to use the extra grip from his fresher soft tires to pull passing moves on Valtteri, Lando, Alonso, and Ocon, then pulled out 14 seconds ahead of Ocon in the remaining 9 laps, so he finished P7, taking home a solid 6 points for McLaren.
Let's go, Danny Rick. I also thought it was really strange that the people voted for him after the collision with Yuki, because I think Yuki Ukes is loved by everybody.
Yeah, Yuki Ukes is loved by everybody, but when you have your Danny Rick on.
Daniel shirt on. I didn't even think about it.
I have my Red Bull on.
I mean, oh my gosh, Danny.
Danny, we love you, Danny. So in P8, we had Ocon. It was his first points in Mexico since 2017, and only his second points finish in the last 5 races, which, like, hearing that is... And reading that, when I read that and like analyzed that and compartmentalized that, I was like, wow, like Ocon, like my dude, like I was calling you the most underrated driver on the grid, and now you're out here not pulling points. So
I don't necessarily know how much of a function that is of Ocon having a struggle period. It's just Alpine having a struggle period.
I miss you up in the points though, so I was happy to see him.
Yeah, because Ocon's had 1 DNF, and he was 11th.
So close.
Not terrible.
P9 went to good old, again, with the good old. They're not old. He's the youngest one out there. Lando Norris. Not the youngest, but youngest looking, I'll say. Lando Norris, a P9 best ever finish in Mexico, and then P10 went to Valtteri, which ended his pointless streak since Canada. Let's talk about a couple more key moments from the race. So, as I said, Verstappen got the start that he needed and wanted, for sure. In lap 13, Gasly ran Lance Stroll off track, and he took a 5-second time penalty, which... More on that later, so hang tight to that one. Ocon and Valtteri had a battle in lap 42 for 19th place. That was pretty intense. And then lap 51 was that Yuki and Daniel collision. And then lap 65, we had the yellow flag and a virtual safety car due to a mechanical failure and ultimately a DNF for Alonso.
Which is just so heartbreaking for the dude. I'm just going to say it. I think it's so heartbreaking.
Yet again, another DNF for him due to mechanical issues.
It's just really, really, really unfortunate. That's really all I can say about it for Alonso is that it's just, I mean, it's true. Like 70 points have been thrown away. 70 points by Alonso's issues. And it's just, I will say, though, the only positive for Alonso lately is that last week on Thursday, when he had the official Alpine Haas steward meeting after the penalty of last weekend, they did they rescinded the post-race penalty that Alonso was given for that 30 seconds. So he was re-awarded P7th with 6 points, and then everyone was shifted down. That also contributed to the Ocon situation because he was 10th, but then lost it back to 11th from his teammate. So I guess it's like last week wasn't terrible for Alpine, but still. It's just, I think Alonso's reaction when he got out of the car was the only thing we really need to say. Looked like he was punching the air. He couldn't kick the car enough, so he just punched the air, and I don't blame him.
This podcast is brought to you by Racing Thread, Formula One clothing for any occasion.
Their clothing features subtle, evocative, embroidered designs for your favorite F1 moments.
From Ricardo's Monza Shoey to Sebastian's Australian scooter ride.
From Lewis's Brazilian comeback to Carlando's round of golf.
Whether you're out to dinner with friends, watching the race at home, or cheering in the grandstands,
Gone are the embarrassing sponsor logos. Instead, Racing Thread is F1 clothing you are comfortable wearing anywhere.
right now, Dirty Driving listeners can get 15% off Racing Thread's entire range of t-shirts, sweatshirts, and polos using the code Dirty Driving.
That's Dirty Driving, all capitals, no spaces, for 15% off their entire clothing range.
Head over to racingthread.com to shop F1 racewear for anywhere. All right, well, Megan, I think it's time to talk about some other things that have happened this week, before, during, in the weekend.
Yes.
Go
So
ahead.
the first thing was that Mercedes are running a new, well, they were going to run the new front wing that they debuted in Austin, but they literally decided not to because they couldn't be bothered with the questions. I don't blame them. I literally do not blame them. They're like, fuck it. I don't want to deal with this issue. I don't want to talk to you people about this thing. So what's interesting is the part of that whole conversation, the whole situation was happening during the cost cap thing. So what does that mean? They ran that new rear wing in Austin. Granted, it was just for a couple of laps, but that will be counted towards the cost cap. Whereas the floor that they were planning on running, the new floor that they were going to debut in Mexico, they never ran. So it won't be counted in the cost cap. Interesting nugget in this bigger conversation about what the cost cap is and its implications is that if you develop the part but never use the part, it in fact does not count.
In other breaking news, Sauber announced that they will have Audi join the F1 team in 2026. So the German manufacturer announced in August that they were going to join F1 as a power unit supplier. But ahead of this weekend, Audi said that Sauber will become their strategic partner as the automotive company plans to acquire a stake in the Sauber group. This means that Audi will create the power unit at their base in Germany, while Sauber will develop and manufacture the car in Switzerland. Sauber will also be responsible for planning and executing race operations. So a new face, a new company, a new automotive beast joining the world of F1 in 2026. So it should be a nice mix up to the new engines that are being dropped and the new fuel that are being dropped in 2026 as well.
Seb to Sauber, F1 as team principal.
That would be
Mick Schumacher as his driver.
You're getting me worked up, honestly. You're getting me worked up.
We'll get excited about that because what I'm about to tell you is just annoying. I feel like this whole story is annoying that I'm about to dive into. So I'm glad I brought everybody joy in my hope. Fingers crossed for Seb de Sauber. But in other news, Max Verstappen and the entire Red Bull organization is currently, can I say boycotting? Maybe not boycotting, not interviewing with Sky Sports UK, as Max believes that Sky Sports has been disrespectful throughout this season, his second title winning season. Ultimately, this is all, I think, stemming from, or I guess like not all stemming from, but the what is it? The straw that broke the camel's back was the Ted Kravitz comment about how Lewis Hamilton was robbed of Abu Dhabi. I don't necessarily think that was incorrect because I think the FIA did in fact admit that Abu Dhabi was in fact wrong because of human error. So I don't actually think that what Ted Kravitz said was like factually inaccurate, but I can see how through a certain lens, the Max Verstappen lens, you could think that is controversial. He said some things that I don't always agree with, don't get me wrong, but that one I was like, I think the FIA said the same thing. But nonetheless, Max made it very clear that this is not a summation of just this weekend, but it is due to a string of comments that are digging and being disrespectful, especially from one particular person. We know who that is, Ted Kravitz. So this is going to be interesting to see how this all unfolds, because Sky broadcasts in the UK, Germany, and Italy, and recently signed an extension till 2026 in the UK. So I'm not exactly sure how Red Bull is going to get away from with this, or is going to be able to do this, or if it was just like, we're going to do it this weekend to drum up some noise about it, and it's not going any further. So wanted to just mention it and let everyone know, mostly because this is something we'll probably talk about again and again and again.
And then we've got to talk about it. It's the big story. It's the big update. It's the big happenings that have been happening in Formula One, the cost cap. So 90 minutes post the Max win in Suzuka, Christian was told that they were in violation. So you might be wondering, go ahead, Megan.
I'm just laughing because how shitty is that? Your driver wins and 90 minutes later, they're like, you broke the cost cap. Figure it out. It's a horrible witch laugh. That's a witch laugh if I've ever. It's a Halloween, so happy Halloween, everyone. But I'm so sorry for my witch laugh. But that's some like really ridiculous. They couldn't have waited till Monday morning, open a business.
No,
They're
no.
like 90 minutes after the shit show of Suzuka. Let me drop this bomb.
Yeah,
They're evil.
they are
FIA
evil.
is evil.
They are, in fact, evil. But hey, again, it's Halloween, so
It's
that's
spooky.
life. It's spooky season, and it's spooky for Red Bull because here's the tea. On October 28th, so what is that? 4 days ago? 5 days ago? Whatever, how many days ago? The FIA announced that Red Bull have officially entered an accepted breach agreement with the Cost Cap Administration. So both Red Bull and Aston Martin, who were both in violation, we'll remind you why they were in violation, have signed the agreements accepting their punishments. Red Bull were found to have exceeded the 2021 cost cap by less than 5%, specifically 1.6%, with the FIA having acknowledged that the team did not correctly report their national tax credit, which would have meant they exceeded the cost cap by just 0.37%, or about $420,000. 13 categories that the FIA listed were treated incorrectly by Red Bull. We could go on to list all of those: catering, sick pay, etc., etc. Now for the juicy thing, what this is resulting in. Megan, do you want to announce this, or do you want me to continue?
Just keep going.
Okay, great. It resulted in a $7 million fine, which has to be paid within 30 days of the signed agreement, and a 10% reduction in wind tunnel time. So 10% means moving from 70% to 63%. And
Yes,
that
because the coefficient is you take 10% of what they were allocated. So that would be 7% of 100%.
Thank you for explaining the math behind that. So this 10% is where it's going to hit them, because it could be up to half a second in time next year. This is compounded by the fact that they have the least amount of time of wind tunnel time, because they are winning because they are the winner of the Constructors' Championship. Overall, this impact will be to the 2023 car, but also future developments for 2024. The fine is outside of the cost cap, so they are being asked to pay this, I guess, in addition to what they're allowed to spend is the nice way to say it. Megan, go ahead.
Which I think is slightly bullshit.
It's a load of bullshit.
So, okay, regardless of how much the dollar amount is, like, I don't give a shit the dollar amount, right? Like, they have the money. Like, Christian being like, it's an enormous amount of money. Okay. Whoa, 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 whoa. In the grand scheme of life, like for me, $7 million is an enormous amount of money. But for Red Bull,
It's not.
nice try, Christian. Nice try. That's, yeah. But I don't necessarily agree that 7 million was the right amount of money. I do think, though, for it to have like a full impact, it should have come from inside their cost cap. So they have to spend less, because it seems kind of silly to be like, hi, we're going to have a cost cap to provide equity amongst teams. And then to say, but when you break that equity, you can spend even more outside of that equity. Right? It just, when you think about it theoretically, it seems really kind of silly.
It's silly because had Haas or Williams been the ones in this breach and had to have paid $7 million, that would have come out of their cost cap.
It would have had to. They don't have the money.
They don't have the money. Exactly. So
Red Bull has the money, so therefore it's okay that it's in addition to what they're allowed to spend next year. That defeats the purpose of providing equity.
Yeah. Silly. And I tell you, if Megan and I were in charge of the FIA, we would have handled it differently.
Just Christian's press conference also was so painful. It was so painful. I watched the whole thing. He's like, it's an enormous amount of money. The aerodynamic testing is draconian. I'm like, what? Who wrote this for you? Like, genuinely, who wrote this for you? Because I don't think you did. You definitely didn't. I also in true Christian fashion, when he got to the point we're talking, so like obviously McLaren was the one who spoke out, and is the one that's coming to the top of my head very staunchly, that the penalty wasn't enough, because the whole point of the penalty is to prevent teams from doing this in the future. Horner's response is like, I'm sure if you burned our wind tunnel down, it wouldn't be enough. He is the drama king of the paddock. Do not get me wrong.
King.
And maybe it's all part of his like shtick as the team principal, is like, I am going to be as kind of ridiculous as I possibly can to distract from the actual situation. Like, let me have this press conference and start calling things out. Just like, let me have this press conference, or not press conference. Let me be ridiculous in response to Zach Brown and say, how dare you, call us cheaters for breaching the cost cap? Our kids are getting bullied. Like, I think this is part of his persona as the team principal now. I used to just think it was his personality, but now I'm like, I think he genuinely puts on this creative mask.
He has to. I don't know how Jerry would put up with it, honestly.
And she seems like kind of a nice lady.
Yeah, I mean,
love the Spice Girls.
Love the Spice Girls, and she was so cute and went up and like gave Christian a big hug and kiss after they won the constructors officially. I know she doesn't put up with this bullshit at home. So
he's not walking around like, oh my God, Jerry, the child's punishment is draconian that you've given her for not doing her homework. Like, what?
Yeah, no, that's not happening.
Christian's kids are going to learn, like, when they get punished, they can just hold a press conference for their family and be ridiculous.
Oh, God. I do want to add before we jump to the next one. This actually falls to both of them. But non-compliance by Red Bull or Aston Martin will result in further procedural breach and an automatic referral to the cost cap adjudication panel. So
we don't know what that means, though.
Do they not pay it on time and get sent back to detention? We shall see. They
have the money. They should just pay it on time. Aston Martin also have to pay. They have to pay $450,000 before the end of that same 30 days. Ultimately, I think the funniest part is that the FIA was like, we concluded that they did this like on accident. They're like, it was done in good faith.
Yeah.
Okay, it's over. It's done. They've been punished. I literally, I don't want to talk about this again until August of next year. We're going to have to talk about it, but I'm tired of talking about it. Like, let's talk about things that are important, like cars on track.
All right, let's talk about tires on track.
Yes. So ahead of the race, Pirelli, and if you are a new fan and are not following them, I highly recommend you follow Pirelli Motorsport on Twitter or wherever they post these things. But they put a little prediction about the tire strategies. I'm sorry that we've never mentioned this before, but I always like to look at them to get a sense of what's going to happen, especially because once the tire blankets come off and you see the cars, you can look at it and be like, oh, are they doing this? Are they doing that? Oh, shit, he's got to make it to this lap to make this strategy work. And then you can kind of like play along as a strategist. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe it's not me. But nonetheless, Pirelli predicted that the fastest strategy was going to be a soft, medium, medium plan, closely followed by a medium, hard plan. So what happened? I'm so glad you asked. In total, 12 drivers started on softs, 8 of them on mediums. Red Bull and Ferrari were on softs. Red Bull were on used softs. And so all of us viewers, I was doing this, the TV announcers were doing this, like Red Bull's going for a 2-stop. They're going for a 2-stop. They're going for the fastest strategy of soft, medium, medium. Like I said, you know the strategies, you can play along at home. But we come to find out Max, after the race, said that it was more like a wait and see strategy. Interesting to note, because we all know that Ferrari has like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P plans, where Red Bull was like, we'll just put you on these and see what happens out there. Mercedes, on the other hand, started on mediums. They were the only one in that fight of 6 cars to start on mediums, which was wild to me because we'd only seen Russell out for a couple of laps in practice on mediums. So I was a little bit like, eeg. And then again, after the race, we would get some more information about what was going on in the teams. And Lewis, in fact, wanted to start on softs. Wow. So nonetheless, what happened here? What happened in the race? Ultimately, it would not be a 2-stop. And let me tell you, I did not predict that. But I think it ultimately came down to the fact that there was a lot less tire drag than we thought there was going to be. And that, I mean, truthfully, the post-race show had it right. I'm sorry. I completely support what James Hinchcliffe said. Red Bull owes Danny Rick a margarita or a beer or a bucket of beers.
Or a reserve driver's seat.
Or a reserve driver's seat, because it was Danny Rick blasting for 45 laps on mediums that I think gave Red Bull the idea that, like, okay, not the idea, they had the idea, but like really gave them the indication that this was in fact possible on track. So nonetheless, it became a 1-stopper. Katie, when you saw that the Mercs were on mediums, because you were watching it real time, what was your initial thought?
I was like, oh, sweet Jesus, here we go. What is this going to bring me? What sweet hell is this going to be? But they weren't the only ones. So I had like some faith that it was going to be okay. Did I expect George to be one of 3 that stopped twice? No, like I thought it was going to be clean cut, 1 stop, switch the tires. I thought what they did at the end, putting him on those softs to get the fastest lap, was a great call. But all in all, I was nervous. My teeth were chattering for them and for the start of the race. I texted Megan and I was like, it's all clear, just so she knew that the turn 1 was all good, because we know every single person was just as nervous for it as we were. So it
Everybody
happened.
saw the memes of
like I think I started the race like 5 minutes late. So I was like 5 minutes delayed, but I texted her and I was like, we're in the clear, all is well. The race has started clean.
They've made it through turn 1. I don't know what's going to happen after this, but turn 1, we're good.
Turn 1, we're solid.
So I saw the mediums. I watched it late. I saw the mediums and like, this is either going to be the race or this is just not going to work. And I think the answer was it's just not going to work, which both the drivers knew and then Toto really knew because on the radio, he's like, hindsight, it wasn't the right tire choice. So this one, I full stop. Do I actually think that Lewis was going to win this race? I think I had a lot of optimism and hope. Reality was I didn't think they were going to win this race.
It was beautiful to see Lewis up on the podium again, and it's even better that George was, just outside the podium. Wish it was a double mark podium. Sadly, I'm happy that Sergio took podium in his hometown, but I think we might be due. I don't want to say it, but I'm gonna say it. I think we might be due for the win in Brazil.
No, stop. Take it back. Knock on wood. Don't jinx it.
I knocked on wood. That's all I will do.
I'm nervous about Brazil because I just genuinely believe that at the end of the day, Red Bull still has the pace. They have the performance. They have the straight line speed. And when you have the upper hand on that, it's essentially like Mercedes just has to get the strategy like perfectly right. And so maybe it is the sprint weekend, or maybe it's Abu Dhabi. Maybe Lewis is just like, I'm just not going to we're not going to get another hammer time into Abu Dhabi, and then I'll give all the fans what they want. I will say though, Lewis is fully committed to winning an eighth. This week in an interview he said, or maybe it was an old interview, I don't know if it was done this week, but he was like, I'm not married, I don't have kids, the car is my baby, I'm fully focused on an eighth world championship. And I was like, it's the hottest thing I've ever heard.
These are things we want to hear out of your mouth. Thank you, sir.
Can you please say them more? Thank you, sir. Things that we don't want to hear, and we really hate talking about, our penalty points, though. And this was the perfect race to actually talk about them because the race was pretty quiet. Mm-hmm. So the announcer spent a lot of time talking about them. So I felt like it was necessary to kind of give a wrap up on them, but also to talk about the fact that Pierre Gasly is very close. He's very close.
Very close.
So how do penalty points work? Essentially, the structure works like this. You get penalty points for on-track transgressions and you get them based on the severity of said incident. If you accumulate 12 over a 12-month period, the driver will incur a 1-month ban. So if you get a penalty point on October 30th, 2022, that's you, Daniel, and you, Pierre, then that does not leave your record until 1 year later on October 30th, 2023. So if you get 12 points in that period, it's a 1 race ban.
Yeah, 1 race ban, not 1 month ban. 1 race.
1 race.
1 race.
I didn't say month, did I?
The first time you did, but then you fixed it. So I just wanted to make sure we're clarifying that it's just 1 race, not 1 month.
Race ban. 1 race ban. So whether you like the penalty point structure or not, that's what it is. I personally think it needs to definitely be changed a bit. But no driver has hit that 1 race ban, but Pierre Gasly is close.
Super close. Absolutely so close. So he's got a total of 10 points, and 2 of them will expire on May 22nd of 2023. So he's got a couple more races to get through.
And next season.
And, well, right, like a couple more races and then a couple more races next season. So
what the fuck, Pierre?
Everyone say a little prayer for Pierre before you go to bed tonight. Say a little prayer
for Pierre. Forever.
So it's wild to think that he's actually scored 10 points, because when I think about Pierre Gasly, aggressive and like having aggression isn't something that comes to mind. But here we go.
Him commenting doggy style wasn't aggressive.
That was aggressive. But here we go. Here we go.
He's not aggressive like on track.
Not on track.
Not
But
that I
he's
can
got
think.
5 points for incidents with other drivers. Interesting that it has only been with Aston Martin drivers. So
Fun fact.
Fun
Pierre
fact.
has a grudge against Aston Martin.
So 2 points from the Spanish GP for his collision with Lance, 2 points from the Austrian GP for his collision with Vettel, and 1 point this past weekend for forcing Lance off track and gaining advantage. He's got 5 points for non-aggressive situations, 1 point in the Austrian Grand Prix for exceeding track limits, 2 points in the Japanese Grand Prix for speeding under red flag conditions, and 2 points just last week in the US GP for failing to stay within 10 lengths of the car in front during the safety car. So, all in all, Pierre needs to be very, 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 very careful. I said it that many times because he needs to be. Because, like, could you imagine? It's not like a 30-second penalty or even like a full minute penalty. You're like out of the race.
And not
Which
for
is
like a sickness.
Yeah, like just because, yeah.
And you know what was even scarier is during the race when they're talking about it, they said that they announced that he had gotten a 2-point penalty. I was like, 11? Pierre,
11?
you better stay away from those Aston Martins.
No, like Pierre needs to be far away from those Aston Martins, and hopefully next season he is far, far ahead of those Aston Martins, and he's back as my most underrated driver of the season. But
I think my issue with the points is that like 5 of them have been for like putting another driver in a dangerous, precarious position. 5 of them have been for like quote unquote like non-aggressive situations. So that would have been like exceeding track limits, speeding under red flag conditions, which I guess that technically was dangerous. But I think the true nature of penalty points, and this is why I think they should be changed, is that it should be for only for incidents that puts another driver in a dangerous position. Because or maybe the stewards need to just calm down on handing them out because they're handing them out like Tic Tacs.
yeah, I'm
like trick-or-treaters on Halloween.
I am shook at how many penalty points have been handed out this year. I mean, Yuki is right behind him with 8 points.
Of course, they're together
forever. Well, not really, but you know what I mean. And then Daniel Ricciardo also earned 2 this weekend for his collision with Yuki. So now he's got a total of 6 points, which like Daniel in true Daniel fashion said, I've got 2 more races. I don't care. He obviously wishes the collision didn't happen, but yeah, he knows. He knows.
I mean, what a power move to say that shit. But he's also like, fuck you, McLaren. Like, I'm out.
Yeah.
No, I see. Look, he deserved the 2 penalty points. So it was weird when it was announced that it was Pierre that was going to get the 2 points and Daniel that was going to get 1. I was like, that's some bullshit. It makes a little bit more sense that Daniel got it. Not a little bit more. It makes more sense because, you know, someone was put into a dangerous position. I mean, obviously he wishes that that collision hadn't happened, but it was his drive afterwards was pretty impressive. And Yuki's okay, but I'm not discounting the fact that that was shitty. But I mean, damn, maybe Daniel should incur some penalties more often. He's got like fuck you energy. Did you see the video of him doing like the finger guns?
Yeah. Pew, pew, pew,
As he was like going for the kill on Ocon.
pew, pew. That was probably my like favorite highlight of the whole entire Twitter after show race thing that we look at. Okay, that's enough for me.
So, in terms of fantasy, I have to admit this, fans, so not good for me. I love Ferrari. I love the Scuderia, but guess what? They just love to kill me in fantasy. They love to kill me softly in fantasy. I'm holding firm in 4th position, but damn, they really just didn't do me any wonders this week.
Yeah, and I'm down where I'm down bad. Everyone knows I'm down bad. I'm still setting my team. I'm just down bad, guys. Like,
she can't recover.
I can't recover. So, tattoos are happening. Megan and I will be in St. Louis in a couple of weeks, and we'll vlog and we'll video the whole thing and share with everybody. But we do want to say, if you have any suggestions for the league next year, please send us a message. We've loved doing this. We've loved having everybody involved. It's created great competition between us F1 fans and our dirty driving community. If you missed out this year, please join us next year. We'll be sure to post all about it in the weeks leading up to the season. But yeah, let us know if you have any tips, suggestions, things we should change. And maybe next year, instead of a bet between Megan and I, we all throw in some money and see who wins the pot at the end of the year.
Ooh, we'll think about it. Katie and I will have to have a separate bet in addition because it's way too funny. At least it was in the early stages where it was back and forth.
Yeah, that was good. Now it's just like
now I'm on my Total Wolf shit and she's on her Yos Capito shit.
Fine by me.
This week, my winner, I am wait, let me put it on. Put on the VB hat. I literally brought it out next to my VB. This is a look, the VB hat over the headphones.
Oh, yeah. That looks so good.
My winner of the week, if you couldn't tell, is Valtteri Bottas. It was his second time in Q3 in 2 races, but this time he actually got to finish the race. Woo, woo, woo. Love when that happens. He qualified 6th, splitting the Ferraris, which I think is very impressive considering the fact that he had struggled. He ultimately ended the race P10. He unfortunately fell down the order, but was able to hold off Gasly for that last point, which is key considering he hasn't scored a point in the last 10 races. So, yeah, I'm loving it, VB. I also loved that he was drinking a mega Corona to celebrate after the race.
Hell yeah.
So, we should document this look. It's fashion.
It's fashion. I'll take a picture of you before we go. Okay, my winner. I picked Sergio Perez. I'm in my Red Bull sweatshirt for him. How could I not? Homeboy takes another podium on home soil. The family celebrations alone were enough for me to pick this man as my winner. Hands down. He was hoping for a race win. I think we all were hoping for a race win from him. But that overtake of George in lap 1 was great. And then really he could have taken P2 had Lewis not have been so feisty and kept second from him. So all in all, Sergio Perez, you have my heart. Papa Perez, you have my whole entire soul, body, mind, all of the things. We love you. And yeah, that's my winner. Megan, take your loser away before I make a fool of myself.
It's not time for B-Reel yet. I was hoping for a Pierre Gasly moment where I could do my B-Reel now because he did it in the middle of press conferences in Austin. I was hoping to do it now, but I can't. Okay. My loser is Yuki. I feel for Yuki Ukes. I love Yuki Ukes, and I can understand why it was so frustrating. So it was awful for him. He started P13. He was up to P11 when the incident happened. He had a chance at points if it wouldn't have been for that collision with Daniel. It is his 5th DNF of the year. So unfortunately, it's just not the year for Ukes.
No.
And it definitely wasn't the race. It really wasn't the race for either AlphaTauri. But you win some, you lose some.
And my loser is something I told you guys to hold on to at the beginning of this episode. It's Ferrari. They finished 5th and 6th in Mexico for the 2nd year in a row. This time, Carlos Sainz finished ahead. It was his Sainz best finish in Mexico and the first time he's gotten past the first lap in 2 races, but an overall disappointing performance from Ferrari, who were never really in view of a win, let alone a podium. So In addition, it was Charles' 100th GP weekend this weekend, and his P6 result ended his career best run of 5 consecutive podium finishes. So I'm going to say it, overall, the disappointment continues. They are just 40 points clear of Mercedes with 2 races to go. So we are in the fight for the end of the season for P2 in the Constructors' Championship.
Ooh. The honorable mention goes to McLaren. Both drivers were in the points. Daniel randomly turned up his abilities after a 10-second penalty and took the fastest pit stop of the season in addition to that points finish. He put up a gap to Ocon that allowed him to keep that position even after that penalty. I mean, where has this been? I don't know.
Yeah, he pulled out some Red Bull era moves, and I love to see it. So
we need his like fuck you energy back. I'm going to say it. We need his fuck you energy back. Maybe he'll get that in his sabbatical. Lando also finished in the points. He took a P9 for the weekend. We also want to give a massive shout out to Mercedes because they're not our honorable mention, but I think it is important to state that they have had some massive development gains to the fact that, I mean, Lewis Hamilton was able to hold on Max Verstappen in that first stint. So definitely something impressive going on there, and only more to come from them.
next week is not a race week, sadly. It's simply the worst, and everyone needs to start preparing for the off season. But it's slightly needed as we're heading into the last 2 races of the year, so we can prepare ourselves to say goodbye to some of our absolute favorites on track. But that does not mean that F1 content stops. Join us next week for our newest episode. Until then, stay
Peace, love,
dirty.
and Formula One.
Peace, love, and Formula One. And happy Halloween.
It's spooky season. Thank you so much for listening to another episode. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us at Dirty Driving Pod on Twitter and Instagram.
Until next time, stay dirty.